Mardy wasn't impressed when playing Hammersmith Odeon. I lived across the bridge in Barnes, literally like half a mile away. And at one sound check, when these guys were turning up in limos, I decided to come on my push bike.
With
bike
clips.
clips, parka, cap. And I overtook them on Hammersmith roundabout there, coming round.
He said to me in the car, he said, Bernie, please tell me that wasn't who I think it was, going past on a bike. And I'm just cracking up in the car going, yeah, it was. It was. He said, we said, we're the biggest band in the country. He's arriving at the gig on a bloody
push
bike.
with
But he laughed, and we had a...
Chained it up to the drain pipe outside the stage door, I was asked not to do it again, but that's one extreme to the other, so...
I just mentioned one this morning, which is apparently on Black Sabbath's first ever US tour, that Bill Ward, not the most sophisticated man at the time, turned up at the airport and his sole carry-on luggage was 2 flagons of cider, which I think is quite impressive and essential travelling, really, for any wannabe metaler.
Well, when Frank and I went to Washington to testify during the Senate hearings in the 80s, the whole PMRC was me, Frank Zappa, and John Denver. And Frank and I were hanging out. It's pretty funny because Frank and I were hanging out in the green room, which is actually some senator's office. And he said, can I bring Dweezil and Moon Unit in to meet you? They're big Twisted Sister fans. And I was like, absolutely. So little Dweezil and little Moon Unit come in, and I signed their stuff. And then my dad, to this day, brags how Frank said, hey, Bob, would you mind watching Dweezil and Moon Unit while I testify? And so my father says, and I watched Dweezil and Moon Unit, and my father was like babysitting for Dweezil and Moon Unit while Frank testified because I was in the back.
Oh, I got bottled. No, it was a bottle. Yeah, it was just that was on I think the Heaven and Hell tour or something with Ronnie anyway, and we were just about to do NIB, the song, and that started the bass solo. So all the lights go out, and what usually happens is the spotlight comes on me, and I do my bass solo and go into NIB. But as the lights were like going down, this bottle was like whizzing through the air that nobody's seen. As the lights went up, it like bounced off my head, and I'm like going, I'm sure I heard a bang, boing, and I was gone. Just totally knocked me out, and there's all blood spurting out of my head. And I was like thinking, where's all this blood coming from? Because it like totally knocked me out, and I didn't know what was going on. And so they dragged me off stage. We had this tour manager that came on and says, what do you think this is, 1776 all over again, you bloody Americans? And of course they're going, throwing everything at this tour manager. And it's like, wrong thing. I think you should have just gone out and say, Geezer's been hit with a bottle instead of like saying, cursing the Americans. And so it was a total full-scale riot. So I was in the emergency ward, and there was all these kids coming in all smashed up and beaten up and everything, and I'm going, hiding my face in case they recognise me because they think he murdered me.
I got to a song called November Rain, which was very, very complicated. And I suddenly realised that I needed the whole band there at the same time so as I could make, a few dozen mixed decisions. And so I rang up their manager, Dougie Goldstein, and I said, Dougie, could I have everybody in the control room on Thursday? And he just fell about laughing. He said, do you know what you're saying? No. It wasn't. I think it was a point of not the best relations between the members of the band. And he said, they'll kill each other. You won't get them in the same room together. It'll be mayhem. You'll wish you'd never said this. I said, well, I'm sorry, Dougie, it's the only way I can see of getting this done without spending a month doing it. Sending tapes back to people and hearing answers and going back to the other person. I said, it's just not going to work. The song lasts for 6 or 7 minutes, however long, and, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so he said, all right, well, be it on your own head, I will set it up. So I was sitting there on the appointed hour, waiting for this to happen. Slash walks into the control room. He said, Axel here yet? I said, no, but he promised he'd be on time. And then somebody says, Axel's car has arrived, Axel walks into the control room. Slash says, good morning, Axel. Axel says, morning, Slash, nice to see you. Oh, so far so good. They sit down either side of me at the desk, and we start mixing. And Slash turns around to me and says, "Hey, Bill, do you think Axel's vocal needs to be a bit louder there?" And Axel turns round to me and says, "I think we could do with a little bit more of Slash's guitar there." I go, "Yes, certainly." like a pair of gentlemen. You know, we finished the song, and they said, "Yeah, we like it. We think it sounds very good. Good night," and left.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so, and Dougie said to me, I don't know what happened. And I said, well, they were just, yeah, they were good guys. They just wanted the song to be good. That's what it was.
One time with the kit, I'd forgotten, and we were having a really great night somewhere in the States, and I got this brand new kit and a new roadie, and he was very, very diligent, and I didn't realise how good he was, but he'd actually clamped all the drums and all the stands in one place, and I tried to heave it over and almost get myself a hernia. Nothing moved. Oh, Jesus!
Yeah, well, I hit him as hard as I can. But again, that's just something that came naturally, you know. Although many, many moons ago when I was first starting to play the drums, I was actually wanting to be a boxer more than play drums. And I used to go to this boxing, what we call a gym, basically, for a friend of mine's dad worked for, I think it was Hepworth's or something like that, the big tailors. And they had a gym and they had a boxing team, and I was aspiring to get on that, you know. And I'd been sparring with somebody, and I no helmets in those days, and I got like a black eye and a fat lip. And I went for a drum lesson one time, and you know, my drum teacher, who was a really old First World War drummer guy, and he said, "Oh, Phil," he said, "you know what, young Philip," he said, "stick to playing drums." He said, "They don't hit your back, and you can hit them as hard as you want." So I thought, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So that was the end of my boxing career.
I went to see Iron Maiden at Earl's Court a few years ago, and you sort of think, you know, shows these days, nothing goes wrong, it's all slick, everybody knows what they're doing, but, you know, seeing Bruce Dickinson rising up on a riser which he was supposed to come up the back of the stage and then step off and into this sort of netherworld sort of scene, and the riser went up so far that he couldn't step down, and seeing him sort of wave at the crew, so they had to lower him down a bit so he could get off. And this is only a few years ago. This is in the days when you think all of this stuff is really slick and nothing goes wrong, and that just gives you sort of faith that sort of the slightly ludicrous elements of metal, as parodied by Spinal Tap and Bad News, are still alive, which is really reassuring, actually.
I was actually out on showing a tour bus with Bill Ward, and I got him to tell me the worst things that Black Sabbath ever did to him. And there were many things that we can't really go into details of. But one of the worst things that they loved doing to him is when he got so pissed and passed out, they would strip him naked, throw him off the tour bus, and just drive off. And he would wake up, a raging alcoholic, naked in the middle of God knows where, probably DTing badly, realising he's got to get to the next gig. And remarkably, he seemed to get to the next gig. And they used to set fire to his beard. Tony Iommi set fire to his beard once, and he had it all went sadly wrong. He had to go to hospital. When Tony Iommi went to see him in hospital, the nurse said, "Is this the man that did it to you?" She gave him a fucking severe bollocking. Black Sabbath's album sleeve, Born Again. The whole story, I designed that. The whole story behind that was Ozzy and Sharon had got married. Sharon had asked her father, Don, to give her Ozzy as a whole package for her to manage, maybe take to a different record company. Don wasn't happy with that, but Sharon did it anyway. So basically his plan was to get as many people from the Ozzy camp to come into the Jet Record, Don Arden camp, who were going to re-establish Black Sabbath as the biggest heavy metal band in the world by recruiting Bill Ward back into the band and getting Ian Gillan from Deep Purple on bass. And I mean, I was very excited by the project, but I was designing Ozzy album sleeves. I'd done 2 album sleeves for Ozzy, and I knew Bark at the Moon was coming up, and I wanted to do that. So I thought, right, what'll I do? Born Again? What's the worst idea you can think of? A baby. We'll give it fangs, we'll give it some horns, we'll make it really red, we'll put shit cut, purple background and give it yellow nails, you know, just cack. And I came up with 4 of them. The other 3 I've never seen. They kept the roughs. But and I wish I could remember what the other 3 were, because they must have been equally as shit. But what happens, these roughs are shown to Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, Don Arden and David Arden. David Arden was Don Arden's son. And Tony Iommi, thumbs up. Geezer Butler, it's shit, but it's fucking great. And Don Arden was, you're right, it is fucking great. And it's so fucking great, I've already had a baby costume made for the American tour. We're going to have a midget in the baby costume. It's going to run across the top of the Marshall stacks, and we'll probably hang it or something like that. And it'll run on at the beginning with its little pitchfork. And of course, that's where the whole bloody Spinal Tap Stonehenge thing came from, that tour. They had a Stonehenge set that was too big to go into most of the venues that they were playing in America. And hence the little one that comes down. Oh, there are many, many stories that can be told.
Did you ever get hit by anything?
No, well, yeah, only once. That was by one of our own fucking fireworks at 5th of November, Hammersmith Odeon. I think it was like 1981 or 1980, I think. And 5th of November, we had this huge firework display, and we had these fire, like 2 crossed wires, and the wires actually happened to cross directly above my head on the drum riser, right? And they had these huge fucking rockets that were, you know, our effects guys had bought these special rockets with like metal hoops on them on the top, so that they could be lit, and then, you know, instead of going straight up out of a bottle or whatever, they were, you know, guided by these wires, so they'd go whoosh, whoosh, with all these wonderful sparks and things hanging out. Well, of course, what they didn't do is coordinate between the 2 guys who lit the fucking fuses, as, you know, so many seconds delay or whatever, or something went wrong, and these 2 fucking rockets collided right midpoint above my head. Luckily, it was the end of the show. I was soaking wet, but it didn't half burn. My hair didn't catch fire. You know, fucking my drum roadie was going, putting me out, you know, with my wet towel or shit like that. I'm going, fucking hell, you can't get away from it, you know. Didn't matter where I went. The wire had sagged as well. It didn't matter where I went. It singed itself to my head. So, but that's the only time I got actually hit by anything. Although the drum kit got hit by, you know, I mean, in the early days when a lot of kids like to, you know, gob on you because they thought you were a punk or whatever. But I mean, that's another good thing about being a drummer, is you've got a certain amount of protection around you, you know.
I learned a great lesson from Richie. I know you're going to love this one. Could I get one more of these?
Yep.
Yes, I can.
Was that the lesson from
Richie?
Richie?
Don't say no, Wendy. You can drive home.
Was that the lesson from Richie?
One more. That's the lesson. No. But the lesson I learned from him was how to treat the fans. Richie had been a very successful man for a lot of years before I joined Rainbow. So, of course, I thought there was somebody here. So I have to look at what came before that, what he went through. So this is not to be meant to be a criticism of him. He did what he had to do. But I remember playing a gig in Glasgow when the first Rainbow tour that we did, and came off the stage entrance, and it was raining. It was really cold. How surprising! And must have been 200 people outside the backstage entrance. By this time it was about probably 12:30, 1 o'clock perhaps in the morning, and they were all there waiting for autographs, mainly from Richie. I really didn't know who the hell we were very much. And he went out the door, got straight into his car and left. And I heard all these kids going, "No, but we missed our train." They waited. They missed, you know what it's like in England. They missed their trains. They missed everything. They're doomed for the next day. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm never going to let this happen to me. I'm never, ever going to let this happen to me. And again, I prefaced it by telling you that, Richie might have gone through a lot of things that weren't necessary for him to go through. And so it jaded his opinion. But then he's always dealt with fans differently than I have. But when I saw that, I thought, well, she'll never, ever let this happen. And we played that gig again as Dio, probably, 10 or 12 years later than that, maybe even later, even after that. And most of those people were probably the same kids who were there. Same people were going to miss their trains. And it was raining and snowing on and off that whole day. And after the show was over, I said, okay, here's our new policy. Everybody comes into the gig. And I'd say, how many people stayed? 2,000? Probably 2,000 of the kids who were in that show, or 3,500 of them, they'd all stayed that night, outside. Brought them all into the hall, set up a table, stayed till 6 o'clock in the morning, signed all their autographs. They wanted to miss the train. It wasn't my fault, but I gave them what they wanted because they missed the train. That set it all up for me. After that, I insisted everybody in my band treat the fans the way they need to be treated, because without them, we aren't. Without us, they will always be.
I mean, the first time I saw him play was in CBGB's in New York. And Ahmet Ertegun, I hadn't heard of AC/DC. And Ahmet Ertegun from Atlantic Records, we were going out for dinner. And he says to me, listen, you know, I've got to see this band, you know. He says, they're from Australia. And they're playing at CBGB's. You know, he says, I hear they're good. So we went. We went into CBGB. Ahmet, immaculately dressed in his suit, you know, and the place was absolutely mobbed. I mean, it was coming from the walls. And I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest. And they start off, and that's when Bon Scott was in the band. And they were absolutely unbelievable. I think my mouth was open for the whole set. It was just like incredible. And I remember afterwards, Ahmet had to go and meet them backstage. And he'd met Malcolm and Angus, but he'd never met Bon. And he'd walk into this dressing room, you know, with the sweat dripping off the walls.
Little one just behind.
Yeah, and he walks in there, and at the time, Bon was taking a leak into a beer glass. So he was having a piss. So Malcolm said, oh, hello, Angus. Hello, Ahmet. Ahmet said, hello. And then as Bon finished, he says, I don't think you've met Bon. And then Bon sort of finishes his leak, and then he goes up to shake hands with Ahmet.
But it just feels, you know, it just feels false, you know, fake if you've got two kick drums you're not using them. So anyway, I bought this when we had a manager, a guy called Tony Secunda, which was before we got the bronze deal. And we were rehearsing in this little place, and he fronted me enough money to buy this drum kit and a Slingerland kit from the drum shop on Portobello Road. And while I was there buying it, I said to the guy, I don't suppose you've got another bass drum that would match with this kit? Well, as it happens, we do, yeah, he says, which was pretty good. So I went and got most of my whatever money I'd got saved and bought the extra kick drum. And then I used to go to rehearsals like before Eddie and Lemmy got there, hours before they got there, and like practice, you know. And then when Lemmy and Eddie, I think they just thought it was for show, you know. And of course, I mean, at first that's all you can, you know. At first that's all you think you can do, you know. Just ordinary mommy, daddy, whatever they call it. Right, left, right, left, right, left. And so that's how Overkill came about. Eddie and Lemmy actually arrived one day when that's all. I was just playing that, you know, and I'd just gotten the hang of it. And as the door opened, I was just about to stop, and Lemmy went, no, keep going. Picked up his bass, and you know, because they must have been, I think they were listening outside or something, you know. And that's how Overkill came about, anyway.
It's always wild at gigs, but when we first came to America, the police were really, really down on the kids. Like if you stood up or came anywhere near the stage, this is like the days before you got your own private. Like the promoters had their own security firm in. You used to have the local police doing the security, and they were really, really heavy-handed. And if you came anywhere near the stage, they'd just use it as an excuse to beat hell out of the kids. You know, I've seen like 12-year-old girls being battered by the cops and everything. And one particular gig, they tear gassed the crowd just because they couldn't handle the crowd, so they just tear gassed them while we were playing.
What do you do in that instance?
Well, we couldn't do it. We had to come off because we were all choking to death.
We were finally playing a Hammersmith Odeon, and I was playing behind there, and Bernie and Micky Moody were just creased up with laughter, tears running down their eyes. I'm going, what's going on? And Bernie just pointed at David, And David's at the front there doing these big macho poses. He's got the mic stand between his legs, the big phallic object, and he's flicking the hair and doing the whole rock star thing. And then I said, what are they laughing at? He always does. And they just pointed out in the audience. And the first 15 rows, they're just 15-year-old boys. There's not one girl there. There's David throwing all these big macho, sexy shapes, and just a bunch of adolescent youths there. Micky and Bernie just creased up.
I was one of those kids. Probably.
It's great. You can see a little boy. What's he doing at the mic stand for?
They have this track, Highway to Hell, which is a great track. And there was a phone call when Mutt Lange's manager called up and said, listen, you know, the album's great, we like the album, but we've got to take off Highway to Hell. What? Got to take off Highway to Hell from the album Highway to Hell. Oh, we call the album Highway to Hell and we don't have Highway to Hell? No, you don't understand that when you play this record in America, it won't be stored because it's called Highway to Hell, not Highway to Heaven. Now this album was what, 1978, 79? I'm not criticising the manager at the time of Mutt because that was commonly thought. Well, you know, AC/DC said, we don't give a shit, you know, we love the track, boom, and it was on. But that's not so long ago.
Reading Rock, everybody was just chucking stuff on stage. You just grabbed the microphone and went, you want to throw stuff at Twisted Sister? We'll fucking meet you out the back. Don't throw stuff at me. I mean, and you meant
I called them out.
Fucking, you know, you offered out the whole
I
crowd.
know, man. I was fucking. I never experienced it before, and I used to like fighting, and I'd called out the entire audience. And the thing was, you're right. I fucking meant it. I was just going to stand there one at a time, as long as I could go, and fight everybody in place. And people just started laughing, going, "This fucking yank is nuts." And it just everybody just sort of like said, fuck it. You know, I won them over, but it wasn't really my intention to win them over. I really wanted to beat somebody up.
I know, I saw it, man. I mean, you dodged a big bottle, and it's like, you fucking right, come on then. Fucking come around the back.
One at a time.
Everybody cheered,
Yeah.
and then we were going like, these guys are fucking great. I think it was the first album, or maybe the second one had been out of that.
No, that was Under the Blade, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like, no, these guys are fucking great, and everybody said, and that was a great moment.
Wait, now were you at Donington by any chance when we played the next time?
No, because I lived in Reading.
Well,
that was my thing, you know.
I'm not a big Donington. We get out there and the same. Now we got 2 hit singles and Can't Stop Rock and Roll's broken. It's 30,000 people. 29,000 are going nuts. No, it's about 27,000. 3,000 are fucking throwing everything. You know, so I do it again. Now I said, all right, one at a fucking time, side of the stage, and this time they're like, we heard that at fucking Ready Rock. Fuck you, and the shit's still flying up there like shit. So, but I meant it. But at the same time, they weren't buying it. So I said, wait a minute. I said, how many of our friends are out there? You know, I said, if I was on stage out there in the audience and I saw somebody throwing something at my friend, I'd be fucking pissed. I'd fucking beat the shit out of him. And if he was bigger than me, I'd get a whole bunch of us and take the motherfucker down. So fucking beat them. Anyway, we start playing, and the crowd just starts beating these motherfuckers. And there's like Altamont. I see a fire breaking out. Yeah! And then the people threw the beating on everybody, and that was the end of the bottles.
When Bon Scott passed away, obviously the guys were gutted, and they loved him, and there was a huge chemistry there. And it was very, very difficult to find a new singer. And when they were auditioning singers, and eventually they got to Brian Johnson, who they hired, the classic story is that actually Bon Scott had seen Brian when he was in his band perform. And he had told the guys, he said, listen, I've just seen this singer. He's got everything. He's absolutely unbelievable. And what a stage act. What he did was, in the middle of the set, he suddenly rolls around the stage like he's dying, and he's rolling all over, and they come, and they take him off in a stretcher. Unbelievable. What a showman. And when they were talking to Brian Johnson about this, reminding him of this, he said, oh yeah, and I had an appendicitis attack.
when we were in Japan, so I still can't bend the bloody thing, this finger. Yeah, we were in Japan and I got so sick of watching chickens being slaughtered on the TV, and it was driving me nuts, like the Japanese television. And I couldn't go out because I'm strict vegan. So, and they don't have any vegan food in Japan. It's all crap, chickens and fish. So I was like sitting there in my hotel room drinking sake and getting like smashed out of my head, not eating, and just being thoroughly miserable. So one night I just beat the television up and broke my finger. Of course, I was being smashed. I didn't even realise I had until the next morning. I'm waking up, and all the bones are sticking out of my finger. So they took me to this this Japanese doctor, and he put this splint on it, but instead of like straightening it out, he bent it over like this, my finger. So I'm like playing away that night, screaming like because I'm hurting so much. So I'm just using these fingers, and did about 3 gigs like that. And in the end, I just couldn't stand the pain anymore. And by this time, we were in Australia. They took me into the hospital and they took the splint off. My finger was literally bent round that way. And the guy said, if you play one more note, you'll never play again because it's already all the ligaments have gone down into my hand, and I had to have an emergency operation on it.
Yeah, the first time I ever saw you play was a girl.
Yeah. Where? In London?
No, I think you were supporting...
UFO?
No, it wasn't UFO. Michael Schenker?
Okay, maybe, yeah. Pat Travis, Michael Schenker, UFO we did.
Taunton Odeon, it might be, or if not, Colston Hall.
Colston Hall, oh fuck, I got nicked in Grimsby.
What for?
Oh, tagging, you know, that we got into town the night before and there were no posters, no nothing, so, you know, I had a few drinks, got some Dutch courage, went and bought some aerosol cans, and they got me like on the 15th one. I was doing Lloyd's Bank, you know, tonight, girl, you know, blah, blah, it's just like, you know, £5 or whatever it was to get in. And yeah, they were just sat in the car laughing. I was hammered, laughing at me, and they kept me in the pokey for like 23 and like 3/4 hours, you know, as long as they possibly could. So go straight out the neck onto stage, and you know, we were a band that, you know, people either loved us or hated us, and there were a couple of like fucking really nasty looking bikers in the front. Give me the finger. So, I put up with it for 2 songs. And just fucking, I don't know, just hit him. I put the just, you know, and it was on, and they stopped the gig, and then like we had to go back out 10-15 minutes later, and all the bikers were waiting for us outside after the show. But we were called Girl, and we had like lots of makeup and long hair and everything, so we borrowed our girlfriends' coats, and we came out and looked like a bunch of girls, and they didn't notice us.
Brilliant, brilliant.
I went home when Biff was born. We were in tour in Germany, and my missus phoned me up, says, I'm contracting, he's coming, he's there. I'm like, I was gone. I just got on the next taxi. This was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was gone. There's nothing going to make me miss that. And unfortunately, I didn't tell the rest of the band. And we got sued for about $250,000 or something. That was an expensive baby.
And when I started working with them, I remember, you know, they were at a little trough at that time because they had an album called Flick of the Switch, which hadn't been so successful, and then Fly on the Wall, which hadn't been successful. And when we were talking about it, you know, I didn't think that they needed to change anything. I got them back with their brother George Young, who had produced all their early records. He was in the Easy Beats, and he came. I got him back working, and he produced an album. And Stephen King, the writer, was a huge AC/DC fan, and he'd called up the record label to try and get AC/DC to do the music to a film called Maximum Overdrive, which was his first film he was directing. And the label kept trying to give him other bands, all their new bands they're working. It was only by accident that he got my number, and he called me. And I said, oh, I don't know. And I call Malcolm and Angus and mention it, and they go, "Oh, we love Stephen King. Yeah, let's do it." So when they did the music for this movie, we were talking about it. I said, there's a sense of humour about you guys, which I think is really great. I think we should try and utilise it. So over another cup of tea, we were talking about the concept for video. And I said, well, video's really important now. And this was about 83, 84. And I said, let's try and do something that was really funny. Yeah, so we're sitting, of course, no ideas. Of course, when you want to be funny, you get nothing. And then, I can't remember, I saw a promotion schedule coming in, and Angus is looking at this promotion schedule, and he's got to do everything. He says, I can't be everywhere, I can't do everything. I said, I wish there was more than one of me. And then I could send him out to do interviews. I said, why don't we do the video like this? So then we got into this thing where we decided to do a video about cloning Angus. And this was a song called Blow Up, Who Made Who? And in it, we had about 20 or 30 Anguses. And what they were fans dressing up as Angus. We taught them how to do the Angus dance, We had an air guitar, and we did this great video.
No, I chucked a chair out of a window once, and unfortunately landed on top of a police car in Los Angeles. Boy, there was this immediate phone call to the roadie, find me a chair for my room, before the cops came up. They managed to snag a chair from another room when the cops came in. I had my furniture. I was very drunk at the time, and it was a stupid thing to do. But I don't know why I did it. I was all by myself, just feeling very happy. I'm probably too tight to throw a TV out the window, that's why. Cost far too much money.
One time I got a call from the manager of the hotel. There was a real problem because one of the road crew had got this super glue and he'd taken all the furniture and stuck it all on the ceiling. So the room was upside down when you walked into it.
That's class.
That was class, that's what it was. That's exactly what Rocky, the roadie, had said. It's class. So it takes genius to think of that.
I tried everything. I mean, I tried the best headphones money could buy as a last resort, and did the old Keith Moon trick, he used to have gaffer tape them to his head because they used to come off because he was always moving his head so much, but I had him gaffer taped to my head so to press them into my ears. And when nobody was playing, I couldn't. There were big soft cushions on them like this. It was literally like having your fingers in your ears, but even more. You couldn't hardly hear anybody speak or even shout. And they were really loud headphones, and it didn't make no fucking difference whatsoever. No difference whatsoever. Lemmy still was louder than everything else.